What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm just joking. That is my, I guess, my best Peter McKinnon impression. He's probably one of my favorite big YouTubers that's out there, I'd say. But yeah, definitely not very original. I stole that from him. In this video, what I want to do is talk about our continued progress on our 4-seat buggy and our plans for King of the Hammers. So the first thing I want to get to is, in the last video, what we were doing is trying to install our transmission, and we were putting in the torque converter, the stock torque converter, and it was too big. So what we had to do was order an aftermarket torque converter that was a little smaller. And so what I want to do is just update everybody on where that's at. So this first part of the video, that's what we're going to talk about. The second part we're going to talk about is our plans for King of the Hammers this year. So stay tuned. Find out, are we going to try and race again this year or not? So here's the first part on the torque converter. In our last video, what we were doing is trying to put this transmission back in with this new bell housing that we put on there because we broke the last one. So the problem that I ran into, the torque converter, that's this one right here, was, now that this is thicker around here, the torque converter was hitting this bolt sticking out. That's right, because this new bell housing's thicker and sticks out more. So the stock torque converter was hitting that. And I'll try to get a size comparison. You can see here's the stock one. Here is the aftermarket one I just ordered. This is a stock stall. I believe that's around like 17 or 1800 RPM, and this is the 2000 to 2200 stall torque converter that I ordered. So basically, you can see the size difference. This one's quite a bit smaller. So I did a test fit. I put this in there, pushed it in all the way, and it does not hit the bolt where this one did. You can see this one has a longer neck, so it's not going to sit in there as far, and it's not as thick. Well, if I can get a view right there, it's not as thick this way. It also has a smaller outside diameter. Now, when we're dealing with a torque converter like this, from what I was reading, I've heard people say different things, but you can see there's going to be less fluid volume inside this one because it's smaller. Some people say it moves fluid through it faster. Other people say they build more heat because they're smaller, but I don't know. I've been around some people that have these stall torque converters working good, and I've been around some people who hated them. I always just went with the stock ones because I felt like with the stock torque converter you can crawl real good. Mine's usually geared low enough that it almost overrides the brake. And that's another reason that people go with these higher stall torque converters, so that when you're idling, you're not pushing through your brakes and your brakes work better. Now this buggy has hydro boost brakes, so this thing locks up no matter what. This one has manual brakes, and these brakes absolutely suck. And that's some of the reason that I'm in the issue that I'm in. I need to put better brakes on this buggy, because after driving the one with hydro boost and then you get in this one, it's just not very fun. So I need to put better brakes on this one as well. So that's another thing that's coming up. So I'm hoping that this doesn't affect me too much, because I really liked how this crawled before. What we're going to do is put this torque converter, slide it in there, and try to wrestle this transmission back into this buggy again. All right, so this thing continues to fight me every step of the way, but we're making progress. Here we go. We've got the transmission back in place. I'm using my engine hoist to lift it up from the bottom, and the jack to kind of line it up, line the bolts up, and then I will put the bolts in, get the transmission secured. Then the fun part of putting all the bolts in, the torque converter and flywheel, I double checked that the pattern should be the correct one on the flywheel, so just one step at a time, making little tiny bits of progress. We got the transmission installed. We got the transmission back in, got everything all bolted up, and I'm starting to put all these wires and hook all the wires and everything back up. I've got the transfer case in, I've got the Atlas all bolted up. All of that stuff is going really good. And surprisingly good, suspiciously good. And so as I'm working forward, getting everything hooked up, like I said, I get a little suspicious when everything's going well. And that's when I get to installing the exhaust headers. So as I'm going to clean off the surface area to install the exhaust headers, that's when I realize, no, I got another big issue. When we were removing the old exhaust headers off this rusty old motor, they were all rusted up, of course. As we're pulling that off, I apparently broke several of the bolts. What I usually do is break them loose with a socket wrench and then use my impact to take them out. And I must have broke several of the bolts off. So I never noticed that till I'm going to install the new header back on there. And that's when I realize I've got several, as many as 3 broken, rusty bolts still stuck in those heads. And that's where I'm at right now. And I'm guessing most people out there know that you're going to have a bad day. If somebody sees these sitting out on the floor, the best thing to do is probably turn around and walk back out, because she's probably going to know you're having a bad day. Removing broken bolts out of a motor is like the worst thing ever. There's so many things that can go wrong. If the drill bit walks at all, and then you get into the threads or any of that sort of stuff, it just sucks. It never goes well. Now, there's 2 things I can do. I can try to drill them back out, or I could try to drop a nut on there and weld in there. That has its own complications too. They're broke off a little deeper. They're not broke off flush. They're broke off a little deeper down into the head. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to weld a nut to these to take them out. So that's where I'm at. This continues to fight me every step of the way. I just got to chip away. We've had so much stuff going on that it's hard to do. Usually, like, repairs like this don't take me this long, but I just keep running into stuff where I have to order parts or this or that. And then we get busy with life and kids' sports and every other thing for months on end. And then so it just continues to take a back seat. That's where we're getting to the second part of this. That is, what are our plans for King of the Hammers? Now, last year we raced for the first time in the Youth 1000 class. And so it was just something. It was a brand new class, and we thought, like, hey, that would be fun to go out and do. It's something we can afford to do. We can't afford one of the big fancy race cars and all that stuff and have all this and do this other stuff. We'd have to, like, sell everything, and then maybe we could buy a car. And we couldn't afford to maintain it, because that's also the expensive part of Ultra 4 racing. It's not just buying the expensive car, it's maintaining it. That's why UTVs are like a great price point thing for people to get into. Like, UTVs are so common, and they're the fastest growing off-road segment out there. I know there's a lot of people that don't like UTVs, but UTVs are a lot of fun when you're driving them. Last year, we took our 4-seat Maverick X3 and then made it race legal. And we went through the entire process and made videos on that, adding window nets and the proper seats and seat mounts and electrical cutoffs, the rear light bar with the amber and blue and all that stuff. And we just went through that entire process and went out there. Now, we didn't do so hot. I mean, we finished, but all we were basically doing in the youth class is running the desert loops and one rock crawling trail. And neither of us have a race background. Me and Emily, we're just going out there, and it was kind of like a cruise for us, The 4-seater was super fast in the desert straightaways, but where we struggled was the windy stuff through the canyons, and like half the desert race course is tight, windy stuff. It's not just open whoop sections that are straight for a mile. That car wasn't super competitive. Plus, when we got into the rock crawling trail, it was like riding a giant bobsled down through the rocks. And then we got held up by other people who tipped over. One person was broke, and they were like blocking the only access of the trail. So anyway, we ended up finishing a ways back there, but we finished and it was super fun. Now, after that, we went and bought a two-seat Maverick R last spring, and we've just been trail cruising that. We've only put like a couple hundred miles on it, but that is such a superior machine. The suspension is so much softer than that X3, and obviously tuning and stuff, but I think it just handles better. Plus it's a 240 horsepower machine versus 180, and that thing just gets after it. And it's more nimble and quick. So it'll be interesting. Emily's gotten some seat time in that this year. We just went out to Moab, made a video on that not too long ago. And we're going to take that thing. What we got to do between now and then is also make that thing race legal. So that's something we're thinking about doing, making videos going forward, making that thing race legal. We got to build a cage for it. We've got to do all the electrical cutoffs and lights and all that stuff. We've got to put the right seats and harnesses, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to be going through the process. And we put 35-inch tires on it now, but the class we're racing in, you can only have 32-inch tires. So we have put smaller tires back on it. But that's fine. We're just racing desert, and we don't even know what the course will be yet. It might be one rock crawling trail. We don't know what they're going to have the youth race on. Now, the thing is, our strong point isn't racing in the desert. Our strong point would be more like getting in the rocks. That's what we spend most of our time doing. So we're not the most competitive out in the desert. These other kids we're racing against, they've been racing. They're like 16, 17-year-old boys and stuff. And even the girls who have been racing, they started in the Razor 170s when they're super young. And they've been racing in that growing up. So these kids are really fast. They're pretty competitive. So with the desert stuff, that's not where we're competitive. Where we got to get better, we got to get faster, and it's something that's completely new to us. But it was a lot of fun, and want to do it again. So we're going to be building that Maverick R so we can take it back out there. The next part of that is we feel bad for our daughter Maddie because she's never got to compete in the rock crawling competitions and stuff that Emily has, and Emily's got to race in King of the Hammers once already. We felt bad for her, so what we did is we went out and bought a Razor 170. And now with this Razor 170, what we're going to do is build this so Maddie can race this in the Razor 170 class when we go to these Ultra 4 races. Now, it seems like these days it's all the rage to build a mini something on YouTube. All these people are building these mini Jeeps and mini kids cars and all this stuff. So why not build a mini Razor and document the process? It's a lot of work too. We have to build a cage for it. We have to clutch it, change the gearing, all that sort of stuff to make it race competitive. We've been talking with some people who have been racing these things for a while, and they've been giving us some tips. We need to put lighter rims on it, lighter tires, all this sort of stuff, because they don't have much power, those little 170s. In the stock class, you can't do much to the motor and stuff. But what you can do is make it lighter, and the goal is to try and make it as light as possible. So that's our plan moving forward. We started stripping this thing down. I ordered a new bender die. I ordered an 1.25 inch bender die because I never had one that small. And hopefully it's here soon, and we're going to start building a cage for that. And that's going to be fun. I always like the metal fab part, and that's where I was hoping we could get to with this thing soon, is to, because I don't like to do metal work in here when I have open motors and transmissions and you have all the grinding dust and all that stuff getting in there. I can kind of cover all the surfaces and then start doing that stuff. I love doing metal work, super fun. It makes, I don't know, there's just something about welding, grinding and stuff that I find very satisfying. So that's what we're going to be doing moving forward. Be making videos along the way and kind of see where it goes. So similar to what we did last year, we did a similar build series for our X3 and then going to King of the Hammers and pre-running and all that sort of stuff. And we will still continue to provide content where we go out and watch all the shenanigans that take place on Chocolate Thunder and Backdoor and all that sort of stuff. Now, we've been going to King of the Hammers for about 11 years or so. So, over the years, we've taken crawlers out and we've participated in all the shenanigans, the late night trail antics out on Chocolate Thunder and Backdoor and all that stuff. And while all that stuff is super fun, at the same time, it gets a little redundant, and the last time I took my rear steer rock crawler out, we ended up having a link fall off because it was a kind of a brand new build right in the middle of Chocolate Thunder. And as my friend's trying to get under there to fix the link, people are like running us over. And so it just got really sketchy. And I don't know. I'm kind of looking at that stuff different now. And that's where participating in the race last year, rather than just being out there and just kind of, you know, driving around and all that sort of stuff, it put a whole different spin on it. It was like a completely different experience. And I look forward to that again this year, is like participating in the event rather than just being at the event and helping out a little bit in the pits. So it was fun. We had a lot of fun last year. It was a whole new experience, brought a whole new perspective on racing and all that. Because there's so much to it. Making sure, one, the chassis and all that's going to pass tech, and then two, making sure all your safety gear and stuff is all going to pass, that sort of stuff. So it was a lot of fun. Looking forward to this year. We got a ton of work to do in only 6 weeks to do it. So I don't know if we'll make it happen, but we're sure going to try. On top of that, I think people have noticed and people have commented, we're like running out of space in here. This is our detached, I guess it would be a, you know, a 2-car garage, but I can fit like 4 off-road vehicles in here, but very tightly. This has been our main workshop for a long time, and we don't want to move. We like where we live. We like the location. We like the neighborhood, all that sort of stuff. So there's been a lot of challenges with the idea of building something bigger, a bigger shop, all that sort of stuff. So that's another thing we're going to be doing moving forward. And what we've been working on is trying to find a way where we can build a bigger shop that would attach to this. And so that's another thing we've been working on. Fingers crossed. Hopefully everything goes through. We're working with a company, under contract with a company right now to build a new shop right behind this one that would attach to this one. And so my goal was to make videos along the way of that as well. That's going to kind of slow down some of our off-road stuff because it's going to be a lot of work to get there. But that's another thing that we're working on. And so we have a lot going on. There's a lot of different stuff going on. So we will continue to try to share the journey along the way and just share what we've got going on. But our next goal is King of the Hammers and getting all of this stuff ready for King of the Hammers.